Didn't turn on my mic. Welcome everyone, and Charlie's going to go around with the mic for audience introductions.
Carolyn Biot, teacher here in the district and parent.
Leah Nolette, teacher in the district and resident of Peru.
Kristen Arsenault, library tech for the high school and middle school.
Kate O'Connor, teacher in the district, resident of Rumford.
Justin Fassett, teacher in the district.
Beth Edwards, teacher in the district.
Diana Doherty, 7 through 12 art teacher, parent, and resident of Dixfield.
I'm Heidi Broomhall. I'm the world language teacher here at the high school.
Mike Nolette, and I'm a resident of Dixfield.
Jay Nicholson, bus driver.
Bethany Meehan Poulin, parent and taxpayer.
Cindy Pathbridge, I'm the librarian at DES.
James Miguel, student at middle school.
Pamela Ringel, mother of 2 at RSU 56 and 2 more that don't go here yet.
Ryan Zostic, health ed educator, artistic director of a music festival, and Dixfield resident.
Darcy Klein, Rumford resident and the director for the River Valley Homeschooler Support Group.
Lisa Hutchins, parent and resident of Dixfield. Daisy Sweat, junior at Derrigo High School.
Ella Hines, senior here at Derrigo High School.
Liliana Salvati, senior at Derrigo High School.
Charlie Swan, principal at DES.
Thank you. Kathy, can Natalie get a folder? Thank you. Oh, you missed overtime? Yeah. All right. I lost. Oh, there it is. Okay. We do have some and we can vote by hand since no one is online for a board member. Adjustments to the agenda. Motion to add the following. Could I have a motion, please?
So move.
And a second. All those in favor? Thank you. Consideration of the minutes of the November 14th, 2023 board meeting. Could I have a motion, please? And a second. Comments, questions, revisions. Seeing none, all those in favor? Oppose? Not voting? Yeah, Kathy's got it. Thank you. This is the time for public comment. You may have a question. We would get back to you. There is a timeline, which I'm going to look up. I think it's 5 minutes for each person, you know, not repetitive, but we can always extend if everybody doesn't get. So is anybody online for public comment? Okay. Does anybody would like to make a comment? Come up to the mic. Is it on, Charlie? Okay. And introduce yourself.
Can you hear me now? Sorry. All right. So per the agenda this evening, the board will be discussing an updated dress code policy for what I'm assuming is the first reading of the new policy tonight. Barb's taking note, but everyone else is. The dress code policy. Right. And then there's a policy proposal from a member of the board regarding library and curriculum materials. After reading both documents, I have a couple of concerns I'd like to just express and some questions. So my first concern, I guess, is who determines what's 2 inches I don't want to be someone who has to measure a student's clothing. That's an uncomfortable position for me to be in. So I just would like some clarification around how that's expected to be enforced at a width of 2 inches of midriff or torso showing on the revised policy. And also regarding the hoods, as that policy was written the way I read it, I assume that means that students would not be allowed to wear sweatshirt hoods as they're designed to be worn, even in the colder weather. And I also that would also mean that the wrestlers I see wearing the full sweat gear when they're running through the halls trying to make weight would also have to remove their hoods. So I guess that question for me is twofold. In terms of policy, is there a difference between a hood and a hat? And would the board consider leaving the wearing of sweatshirt hoods up to the discretion of the individual teachers, the way the hats are at the individual discretion, particularly if that policy just applies to the secondary level. It doesn't apply to elementary. So I would just like the board to give that some thought. And then in terms of the other policy that's just up for discussion tonight regarding materials in the school's library and curricula, I guess my first question is what prompted this and why is the current policies that have been vetted by our district lawyers not sufficient enough that there needs to be a new proposal? I was pretty curious, so I did a deep dive on policy. I found at least three that I believe accomplish the intent of the proposal. The member written policy cites the Internet Safety Policy IJNDE and specifically references the section titled Harmful to Minors, which does include 3 specific points. 2 of them are in the policy as written. That was in the proposal as part of the board agenda materials. But there's a third bullet point in the board policy that exists, the IJNDE policy, that states taken as a whole X, as all the other things apply, and then taken as a whole X serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value as to minors. The proposal that's for discussion tonight omits that third bullet from the one that exists in the board policy is omitted from the one that's being discussed tonight. So I just want to know if that was an oversight or if there was a purpose to leaving that one out. Furthermore, policy IMB is a policy for teaching about controversial and sensitive issues. And that states in the very first article A1 that the policy should be defined in terms of the rights of students rather than the rights of teachers. And further, that defines those student rights. I'm not going to read them all, but the first one says the right to study any controversial issue which has political, economic, or social significance, and concerning which at the appropriate level he or she should begin to have an opinion. That same policy goes on to then further address the parameters that teachers are required to follow when addressing controversial issues in the classroom. Policy IJJ is the policy for instructional library media materials selection. That has a clear procedure for which books do and don't go into our libraries, how our curriculum materials will be selected, and outlines a procedure for challenging materials that's already been successfully used in this district to remove a book from the high school library. Policy IJJ also states that the quote, final authority as to what materials an individual will be exposed to rests with the student's parents or guardians. It does go on then to state that at no time will the wishes of one child's parents to restrict the viewing of a particular item infringe on other parents' rights to permit their child to read or view that same material. But this policy does expressly put parents in charge of what their kids are exposed to or not at school. Policy IGA is the board policy for curriculum development and adoption, which details the process by which curriculum materials are selected, and that process is overseen by the board's curriculum subcommittee. The board has subcommittees for personnel who vet our candidates, do reference checks. Anyone who works in public schools has to pass a fingerprint background check. And then all hires are approved by the full board. So there is oversight by the board on all hirings. The board also has a subcommittee for policies where the district policies are reviewed and updated. We're doing that tonight with the updated dress code policy. So I guess to borrow a procedure that we use in contract negotiations, has there been an issue with the current policies or with the board oversight that this new proposed policy is necessary, or is the current board policy sufficient? That's my question, I guess. I do want to thank the board for letting me speak tonight. I know your jobs aren't easy, especially on a night like tonight when there's going to be a lot of people here. And I appreciate the time that you guys allow those of us who have concerns and questions to speak. Thank you very much.
Not to answer, just a question. Okay. I'm not gonna ask.
What are the chances you have that in writing? I would imagine we're going to have a policy meeting related to this suggested policy, and there's no way we're going to remember all that. Do you have that in writing? It would be helpful, I think. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Your questions will be answered later if they're not here. We don't answer the questions. Okay, next.
Evening. I just have two things for you. It should be really quick. I tried to keep it short as possible. Sorry. Yeah. Not close to the mic. Is this good now? Yeah. Better. Okay. I just have two quick things for you. 2 pages. This first part might sound a little familiar. I apologize to the members of the board who were present this summer when we had a discussion about rating systems, but for those who aren't present, I wanted to repeat myself a little bit. So, to the members of the board, good evening. This statement is meant to provide some information regarding the policy set to be discussed today, materials in school libraries and curricula. The bulleted points in this policy I recognize as taken from our policy IJNDE, Internet Safety, which is itself taken from the Children's Internet Protection Act definition of material harmful to minors, though the proposed policy has removed the vital third bullet point. Harmful to minors. The term harmful to minors means any picture, image, graphic, image file, or other visual depiction that, one, taken as a whole and with respect to minors, appeals to a prurient interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. 2, depicts, describes, or represents in a patently offensive way with respect to what is suitable for minors, an actual or simulated sexual act or sexual content, actual or simulated or normal or perverted sexual acts, or a lewd exhibition of the genitals. And 3, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value as to minors. Removing the third bullet point raises alarm for 2 reasons. Firstly, the proposed policy would remove any materials which depict, describe, or represent sex regardless of their literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. This would mean that, if enacted, we would become the only district in the state of Maine where a student cannot read Shakespeare, Hemingway, Morrison, or even the Bible. Secondly, the bullet points taken together make up what is referred to as the Miller test for defining material considered legally obscene, as dictated by the 1973 Supreme Court case Miller versus California. Without the third bullet point, removing material based on policy as written may be considered a violation of our students' First Amendment rights if challenged in court. I understand the concern being addressed by the policy for discussion, and I wish to shed some light on the selection process as outlined in District Policy IJJ. As school library staff, we are tasked by the district to select materials which A, support achievement of the content standards of Maine system of learning results, B, support the goals and objectives of the school system's educational programs, C, enrich and support the curriculum, D, take into consideration the varied interests, abilities, and maturity levels of the students served, E, foster respect and appreciation for cultural diversity and varied opinions, F, give comprehensive, accurate, and balanced representation to minorities and women in history, science, leadership, and the arts, and acknowledge the contributions of ethnic, religious, and cultural groups to our American heritage. G, present a balance of opposing sides of controversial issues to enable students to develop a capability for critical analysis. H, stimulate a growth in factual knowledge, literary appreciation, aesthetic values, and ethical standards. I, provide a background of information that will enable students to make intelligent decisions in their daily lives. And J, respect the constraints of the school unit's budget. In order to discover and select materials, a number of reputable, professional, and highly respected review publications are consulted. This includes Booklist Online, the book review publication of the American Library Association, which has been publishing reviews for 118 years, Kirkus Reviews, who has been publishing reviews for 90 years, Publishers Weekly, a highly respected review publication, which has been publishing reviews for 151 years, School Library Journal, another publication of the American Library Association, which has been publishing reviews for 69 years, Common Sense Media, a nonprofit organization which seeks to provide fair and accurate information to parents, children, and educators about various types of media, which was founded in 2003, so they're in their 20th year. We also consult local and national book award lists. These award winners are determined by committees within the American Library Association, committees within the Maine Library Association, and some awards which are voted on by Maine students themselves. There are no materials in the library which are considered obscene by law, and nor do we seek such materials as part of our selection. The policy argues that because we filter the internet, we should also filter the books in school. This is a moot point. The internet must be filtered because without doing so, students would have access to any and everything published on the internet, including materials which are illegal and per the Miller test harmful to minors. The educators this board selected, screened, and hired are already filtering what material does and does not enter classrooms and libraries. Students only have access to materials which have been deemed appropriate, accurate, and educational by your professional staff. The suggestion that this policy is necessary, in addition to already existing policies, implies an immense lack of trust in your staff who, between my two buildings, the middle school and the high school, have a combined 702 years experience. Educators do not seek to give students inappropriate and obscene materials. We wish to, as per policy IJJ, prepare students to meet the content standards, support the achievement of the school unit's educational goals and objectives, and provide enrichment opportunities that expand students' interests and contribute to a desire of lifelong learning. The second piece I have today is a petition that was signed by some staff members that I was asked to read out and deliver to the board. To the RSU 56 school board, we, the undersigned, write with concern in relation to the recent policy proposal, which would include the following stipulations in relation to educational materials. I won't read them again because we're all familiar, but it's the 2 bullet points in the policy. We, the undersigned, fear there may be significant consequences to enacting this policy, which would affect many different classes within our educational system. Some possible drawbacks to such a policy could include, but are not limited to: 1, anatomy may not be accurately represented to students. 2, secondary students are required to receive age-appropriate instruction on affirmative consent as mandated by state law describing health education. 3, materials which are age-appropriate may occasionally address mature subjects, including those related to sex. Students would no longer be able to approach those topics in a safe and guided environment. And 4, taken as written, this policy would remove classic foundational works of literature and artwork from our classrooms. We, the undersigned, understand that there are concerns as to what students are being taught within our schools. As employees of RSU 56, we know that we have a responsibility to our students to ensure that the material we teach is age appropriate, not only in presentation, but in our exploration of said material. We use this careful consideration when we develop our lessons and select educational materials. We believe that our professional judgment and existing district policies are already sufficient in approaching and appropriately meeting these needs. We ask that you continue to allow us to do our job as described, and this is signed by 18 staff members. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry that I took so much of it.
That's all right. I'm keeping track of the time. Yep, thank you.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Biot, and I'm a teacher at both Dirigo Elementary and Dirigo High School. I've been teaching high school English in this district for 16 years, and I'm here this evening to oppose the proposed policy that would remove books from our district curriculum. Although I have several reasons to oppose this policy, I'll briefly highlight 2. 1, I'm the advanced placement or AP teacher at Dirigo High School. These 2 courses, AP Language and AP Literature, are both dual enrollment courses, meaning I'm an adjunct professor for University of Maine at Farmington, and my students earn 3 college credits per course, free of charge while in high school. Several of the texts we read, discuss, and learn from would be removed if this policy were passed. It is my opinion that we would be doing our students a great disservice and removing opportunities from them if we were forced to curate and teach a list of books that does not reflect or run parallel to those texts taught in the UMaine system. 2, in the ELA context, teachers choose books based on their thematic content, literary style, historical and/or social context, and most importantly, student interest and relevance. I have never chosen a book because of the inclusion of sex or sexual content, nor do I know of any professional educators who have. Yet, over the years, many of the classics and contemporary award-winning books I have used in my classroom do in fact contain these subjects. Why do they contain them? Because literature celebrates and interrogates being human with all its complexities. Timeless subjects like love, loss, power, inequality, coming of age, freedom, finding oneself, and more have been written about since we first started sharing stories. Those same subjects, accompanied by relevant and equally timeless themes, are what students take away from reading these works of literature, not the mention of sex or a sexual act. They remember the class discussions about power over another, about overcoming great adversity, about breaking cycles, about making the world a place where all people are safe and valued. Although some texts in our ELA curriculum may depict or represent a sexual act or sexual content, no text we use or have used in our classrooms does so gratuitously. No text used in our classrooms is perverse or lewd. Every text is chosen with care for our students and their learning by professionals who believe in educating the whole child about the whole world. I hope you will oppose this proposed policy. Thank you.
Hi, mine's not as well written as theirs, but I'm Diana Doherty. I'm the 7 through 12 art teacher. This is basically about my curriculum at the high school. I've been teaching here since 1999. I have, if this policy passes and I'm not allowed to show nudity, it will entirely change the art curriculum as we know it. There will no longer be Greek and Roman art. There will no longer be Michelangelo, Edward Manet, Paul Gauguin, Picasso. I could name hundreds of artists. That will not be allowed to be done. As I said, I've been teaching here for over 20 years. I have yet to have a parent complain about my curriculum. I don't know what has changed in 20 years. It was the same 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. I don't know what has changed now to make me have to worry about the type of art my students research and my art history. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Good evening. My name is Leah Nolette. I'm a teacher here at Dirigo High School, as I've already stated, and I'm a resident of Peru. I've also lived in the area my entire life and graduated from Dirigo in 2015. I am here tonight to make a statement against the proposed policy, materials in the school libraries, and curricula. My primary reasons for this are as follows. This policy would drastically limit the classic materials I would be able to pull from as an English teacher, and it would negatively impact present and future students. My first point surrounds the literature that would be removed under this policy. When designing units, my colleagues and I use our professional discretion to assess the literary merit of classroom texts. Much like the internet filters the school uses to safeguard our students, we as teachers provide age-appropriate materials for students to engage with. If this policy were to be enacted at the school, we could lose access to many titles considered classics and staples in the classroom. This could include the following, which are being taught currently. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, William Golding's Lord of the Flies, multiple works by William Shakespeare, including Macbeth, Hamlet, and Romeo and Juliet, John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, and George Orwell's 1984, just to name a few. This policy would be detrimental to present and future students. If the purpose of RSU 56 is, and I'm quoting here from the proposed policy, to educate students in the ability to think critically, depriving them of literature is going to make that task near impossible. Stories have power. And when teachers select texts that address real-world issues, students are offered the opportunity to develop awareness of the world around them. While I do understand the desire to safeguard our students, this is already being done without the policy that does more harm than good. I would ask the board to trust the professionals that they hired to use their discretion in selecting materials and to dismiss this policy from consideration. Thank you for your time.
As I stated before, my name is Ella Hines, and I've brought a bit of a show and tell, as you can see. I'm a senior here at Jericho High School and an avid reader, and I am here to speak against the proposed policy to cleanse our school of what may be deemed as inappropriate materials. These 5 books are from my personal collection. Each one has a copy in our library. If this policy is enacted, as it is written, these 5 books will be removed from our school. I know 5 books doesn't seem like a lot, but these 2,367 pages will be taken away for something that is considered too lewd. Keep in mind, these are the only 5 books I own that overlap with books that may be removed from our library. This is a short list of books that will be removed from our school if this policy goes through. The Catcher in the Rye, 1984, The Giver, Go Tell It on the Mountain, The Handmaid's Tale, Invisible Man, Looking for Alaska, The Bible, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Cold, which is one of the books nominated for the North Star Young Adult Award, Meet Earl and the Dying Girl, the Twilight series, Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl, and practically every other Stephen King book, and many more that I have not listed for the sake of time. Classics that have been taught in this school for years are on the path to being removed from our classrooms. The reading of classics is very important to help develop the academic skills of young adults, which it seems our school is in need of. According to niche.com, our reading proficiency based on state testing is 35%. And according to usnews.com, it's 30%. And I don't doubt these numbers. I have heard students in my English class proudly proclaim that they haven't read a full chapter book since 3rd grade. Your goal is to help students learn to think critically. Instead of removing books from our school, we should be concentrating to promote reading by adding more into our curriculum and library to help better educate our students. Secondly, I would like to mention the emotional impact that will be put on students like myself. The library is a safe place for many people, including me. The books that have made a huge impact on my life, that have made me feel seen and understood, would be taken from our shelves according to the policy presented. For example, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This beautiful book deals with mental health and what it's like to go through high school not fitting in. As someone who has dealt with mental health issues and has always had a hard time making friends, I felt very understood while reading this book. Because of this policy, someone may lose the chance to read a book that will be as meaningful to them as The Perks of Being a Wallflower is to me. Readers like me create a world in these books. To take them out of this library would be like taking away pieces of our world. And lastly, I just want to ask, how far is this policy going to go if enacted? Is this going to be the end? Are there going to be more policies implemented that will take away our books? I only have 1 year left here, and I'm not only doing this for myself, but also for library kids who will come after me. They deserve to have a full, comforting library with books that will make them feel seen. If I leave you with anything from this, I want you to be cautious with this policy if it is put through. Each individual piece of media should be looked through and debated thoroughly before removal. It is very important to the avid readers of this school that you take great consideration before removing any books. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, and good evening. My name is Daisy Sweat, and I'm a junior here at Jericho High School. I'm here to talk about the proposed policy that would remove books from our school library and curriculum. The first thing about the policy to note is that it uses Internet Policy IGNDE as justification, as well as lifts its criteria directly from said policy. This is problematic for 2 reasons. Firstly, the Children's Internet Protection Act specifically requires schools and libraries to block or filter internet access to pictures and materials that are, quote, obscure, obscene, child pornography, or harmful to minors on computers that are used by students under 17 years of age, therefore negating the logic that because internet is filtered, books should be as well. Schools have no choice. They are required by law to have said filter. So using that logic is a gross misrepresentation of the facts. Secondly, the idea that the internet and books are interchangeable under a one-size-fits-all set of criteria is just plain unrealistic. The internet policy is framed around the assumption that the bulk of the content will be visual, making it much easier to police what qualifies or not. Books predominantly consist of text, leading to a much more subjective evaluation process. The internet's capacity for being extremely specific is leagues ahead of books, with over 1 billion active websites, making it impractical to impose the same criteria on the very limited amount of books we have at school. Trying to force fit criteria designed for the internet onto books is just not feasible, given the vast differences in scale and media format. This policy would also have a huge economic effect. It's a colossal waste of taxpayer money. Thousands upon thousands of dollars have been sunk into purchasing books and textbooks for our school, only to chuck them out due to this policy. And it doesn't end there. Taxpayers will keep bleeding money into the future as we scramble to find alternatives for everything that will be thrown away. Just replacing the affected textbooks would cost a small fortune, let alone replacing what will be thrown away from the library. It's a slap in the face to taxpayers who are watching their hard-earned money go down the drain with no assurance that it won't happen all over again when the next policy like this comes around. The economic aspect of this policy sheds light on a larger issue. This policy is not practical. The wording is already subjective and vague, and if this new policy goes through, every single book will be subject to board approval. Every book, tens of thousands, possibly millions of pages, would need to be meticulously reviewed to see if they meet policy standards. And let's not forget that every new book purchase would undergo the same scrutiny. It's a logistical nightmare, not to mention a monumental waste of time and resources, both of which are already in short supply. This lack of realism is underscored by the policy's language, particularly when it states that the exploration of a given topic, alternative books or materials must be sought. Such a directive is profoundly subjective and impractical, especially when considering iconic works such as Michelangelo's David, the literary and medical contributions of Gray's Anatomy, or the Bible. These cultural and intellectual pillars defy a simple substitution, highlighting the inherent impracticality of this policy's approach. The policy's prescription to seek alternative books or materials when exploring certain topics introduces a level of subjectivity that poses a significant challenge. Attempting to find equivalents for such foundational works becomes an exercise in futility. The singular beauty and historical relevance embodied in Michelangelo's David, for instance, cannot be supplemented by just another alternative sculpture. Likewise, the Bible, a cornerstone of religious and cultural identity for numerous communities, excludes replacement by alternative texts. Gray's Anatomy, which literally wrote the book on human anatomy, isn't interchangeable with any arbitrary substitute. On a personal note, on my 10th birthday, instead of celebrating with my family, I was in the hospital being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, a condition I will have for the rest of my life. The hospital stay taught me one thing that has stuck with me all these years later. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. When I got into high school, I was delighted to find Gray's Anatomy on the shelves of the library. I've spent hours in my school library poring over it, as well as reading all the other medical textbooks I could get my hands on. Medical textbooks that will be removed if this policy passes. On the outside, it's just removing a book from school. But to a student, to me, it's ripping a book and a dream out of my hands all at once. In essence, the policy's directive to seek alternatives lacked practicality when faced with an irreplaceable nature of these cultural milestones. The profound impact and unique contributions of such works to human civilization necessitate an appreciation for their intrinsic value, acknowledging their irreplaceability in the educational and cultural landscape. To insist on finding substitutes for these enduring classics reflects a misguided attempt to fit nuanced and unparalleled expressions of human creativity to a one-size-fits-all educational landscape. In conclusion, the proposed policy not only misinterprets existing laws and regulations, but also fails to consider the unique qualities of books, the economic impact on taxpayers, and the impracticality of implementing such sweeping changes. For these reasons, this policy is unfit to be implemented in our schools in any capacity. It is imperative that we resist such a misguided approach and uphold the principles of a thoughtful and nuanced learning that truly prepares students for the complexities of the world beyond the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Mike Nolet. I have no prepared speech because when I received this policy, I read it. I thought, that's the Miller test without the good part. You see, I taught in this school for many years, and I'd still be teaching in this school if it wasn't for the budget cuts like 9 years ago. And I taught my kids the Miller test. And I thought, well, Malcolm Miller sent a bunch of pornography catalogs to people in his community. My colleagues at Dirigo aren't doing that. This policy is silly and annoying. I am not going to give it my time. And then I came home tonight and my daughter said, are you coming to the meeting? It is the end of my trimester. I am really tired. So now I am tired and annoyed. And I see on Channel 6, this community being thrown up as book banners. Now I am tired, mad, and embarrassed and annoyed. So I throw on my jacket. I walk the 427 steps to this building that I lovingly walked for 9 years to tell you to stop. You are embarrassing us. Don't do it. Have a thoughtful conversation tonight. Engage in a dialogue, but put this policy to rest. It is unbelievable. You do not want to light the culture wars in this community. Don't do it. Trust your professionals, trust your existing policy, and let me rest.
Anyone else?
Cindy Petherbridge. I just want to end with just saying that in our news, medical field, educational field, it is not the books that are causing mental illness to our young people, but it's the digital age. And I think that our board should spend more time looking at our internet and digital curriculum than the books that are on our shelves in the library.
Thank you. We do not respond.
I have an email for a Dixfield resident.
Then they can send it to us.
I can't read it.
It's public comment.
This is public comment.
Was it sent to the board chair? Was it sent to the board or was it sent to you?
It was sent to me at my
Okay, no, you can email it to us and we'll all get it. Actually email it to Pam and she will send it to the whole board. No. Because it is not, it is public comment. We are going to get emails from other people. No, it's not a comment. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I'm here to talk about the dress code.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm very concerned that it's becoming more and more acceptable for our children to have a hand in deciding the policies in school. I know I'm not just speaking for myself when I say that at that age, I thought I knew what was best for me, but I actually did not. It's our job as adults and parents to guide the younger generation. I wish to God I had someone to look out for me and guide me back then, but I mostly didn't. I got myself into some pretty dangerous and compromising situations. I'm lucky nothing horrible happened to me, but I'm sure others were not so lucky. If we let the kids decide, if we let the kids have a major say in the dress code, what's next? Where will it end? Will they choose their own curriculum next? We should be very concerned about our kids dressing immodestly. We want our children to have dignity and self-respect, to value themselves beyond their looks and figures. If our kids, and especially our girls, are allowed to dress immodestly, we are sending them down a path to believing they are only a body. with no mind or soul inside. If a person believes that, it leaves them open to all sorts of abuse because they don't think they deserve to be treated any better.
Thank you. Anybody else? No hands up. Okay, gotta find I think it's communications.
I have no new communications.
Okay. We're on new business, and before we start talking, I'm just gonna give, because Kathleen had concerns over the way the policy meeting went. Number one, board members need to remind you either send it to Pam. We'd never send to all board members. That's doing business out. Just a reminder. Okay. And then excuse me. No, go ahead, girls.
I didn't send it to all board members. I sent it to the policy committee.
You have the whole policy committee?
I sent
the whole policy committee group is put by Brian Keene. I can't even make up that group.
I sent
okay,
it to
okay.
the 6
all right.
policy members.
Okay.
And you and Pam.
6 policy. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. I didn't know. I was told that I looked, and I don't usually look to see what. So that's good. Thank you. My mistake. So, but there was concern number one, why were we looking at RSU 10s? Number one, when we became RSU 56, what policy we approved RSU 10s policies. Number two, it is not a new policy. I have 2022 when we changed the hats. I have 2020 when there was a law change, and I have 2014 when we did some revisions. So there's history behind this whole policy. Number thing, and I did look on the policy minutes saying we didn't vote. I thought we had a consensus because it said decision. And Larry, I don't know, but next time I'll make sure we do a formal vote, because so far in our policy meetings, we're not going to reach an agreement. Unless more the people come, we're just going to be tied. So that's why I thought it should go forward to get, we had 2 policy meetings on the dress code. One, we had people come, and then we had another one we tried to find a compromise because we had discussed at the first one, and when we discussed the whole policy, when Tina brought it up, there were some things like bra strap, things like that. What should, it's because it is an old policy. That piece, MSMA used to have that, and then they revised theirs probably many years ago. So we have a policy which we tried to give some compromises. So that's where that one. Do you have any questions on that?
So I'm looking at the current policy.
Correct. This is the whole current with the way it would have been revised.
Yeah, and it was revised April 26, 2022, right?
Correct. And adopted on the 17th, which is when we became RSU.
Yeah, yeah.
And we adopted the policy that RSU 10 had.
Yeah.
And we then had, I think 2020 was about change of law where you really can't do something. It was minor changes. And then 2022 was when the student council came here, the middle school, and asked if they could wear hats with the same language as the high school. So that's the history piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would think, though, that we would revise our policy, our current policy.
Well, when you look at when you look at a policy, number one, Your first thing is it law? Is it something we are required to have? Is it recommended?
Yeah.
Is there a local need? You look at those three things. Then the first thing people look for is the current policy, any changes in the past, MSMA, who have sample policies, and sometimes they don't have them, and we have to look around because there are some policies that they leave to the locals. So that's the standard practice for any policy. So the one that was put in the board packet, the crossed out is our current format and with the changes included. So that is, and this is the first reading. I didn't even ask for a motion because I figured we needed to get clarity on this. So, questions? Go ahead, Brad.
Yes. Someone in the audience had mentioned hoods. I mean, I read it. I mean, to me, the way I read this is, it's not a matter, can you wear a hoodie? Tell me if I'm wrong. You just can't have the hood part up on your head in class.
That is correct.
And hats optional to teachers. I happen to think teachers should have a lot of control of their classrooms. So sure. But having hoods up, it just, the implication is you're not paying attention. You're singling yourself out. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I noticed in here, maybe I missed it. We're not talking about bra straps anymore.
No, but
because that's old school stuff.
Well, it is if we don't change our policy.
I think that should be removed from my opinion here, that we're not worried about whether we see bra straps. And then the additional part of midriffs, which we seem to get all worked up over. I mean, for the guys, not so much. I mean, their clothes tend to be a little longer. Girls wear shorter midriffs. I think there's a limit. I don't think teachers need to go around with a yardstick or ruler or anything. I think it's a judgment call. The reason why you put 2 inches, so if it comes right down to it, we need to find out whether, the student is busting the rule. I suppose you could go measure that midriff. I think it's going to take judgment of the teachers, administrators. This seems to be a really, really reasonable policy. And frankly, I think it's to remove distraction for what we do every day. I'm not a super rigid guy. I've never had a problem with having uniforms, but you notice that's not in here. We're not asking for uniforms. Nobody is. So this seems to be a really reasonable policy. We shouldn't have a battle over. I think it should be up to Pam and her administrators to deal with the midriff piece of it. How do you deal with that? That seems to me like they could handle that, no problem. I don't see a battle over this at all.
Thank you, Brad. Liz, go ahead.
On the hoodies, reasoning for not having them up. Can you give me a couple of good reasons, Pam?
So the primary reason is because they have earbuds in and you can't see that with their hoods up. That would be the primary reason of not having hoods up in school.
30 years of not thinking about earbuds.
Yeah, no, that's what I figured it might be, because when you say you're not supposed to have those in when you're in the classroom, if you got your hood up, yeah, you can't see it.
Thank you. Larry?
Teaching at a high school in Lewiston, we had a hoodie problem. We also had a gang problem. We also had all sorts of little problems like that. Well, another reason they didn't wear hoods is because they pulled it over their eyes and now all of a sudden they're asleep. So if you can't see their eyes, or when they're talking to me, I want to make sure they're talking to me, not to Joe Bull over here. So it's the eye contact. So those are the earbuds is the big deal. So that's one of the basic reasons that I would not suggest hoodies.
Go ahead, Tina.
Just a question on the updated proposal here. So in the first article or first part of it, it's that we recognize the responsibility for the dress and appearance of students rests with the individual students and their parents or guardians. the board will not interfere with the rights unless personal choices of students create disruptive influence on the board program, blah, 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 blah. But it kind of, so is that taking precedence over the ground rules of, hey, you know, your shorts really shouldn't be that short. You know, we shouldn't be seeing private parts hanging out. Which part of this is going to be backed up?
You do it now, so you tell.
So I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe our current one also gives parent. So the current one says the personal style, individual preference, and parent to this effect is the expectation that the students dress appropriately, blah, blah. So it goes to parents. But even though that is there at the beginning, when you list out things that are can and cannot happen, that's what we're going to enforce, are the pieces that can or cannot happen per board policy.
Okay, thank you.
So just out of curiosity, I just asked Barb where the new language came from, and I don't know if you want to answer for the whole board.
Okay, the two first paragraphs were MSMA, which RSU 10 had, but that's where they ended the policy. They didn't have bullets, and there still was some very bullets that we still thought was very important, like hoods. And so that was something we continued. Okay. Yes, Kathleen.
I personally like the introduction for our current policy better than the recommended changes. So to me, it's confusing. The RSU board recognizes the responsibility for the dress and appearance of students rests with individual students and their parents or guardians. So do we have a dress code or no? And it seems conflicting, and I like the prior one better.
I could probably address, I think I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
So what they're saying essentially is that they understand that a kid is going to want to represent themselves in their individual style, but we have these rules in place where we respect their style, but we still need to be aware of, you know, clothing that might be impractical or not appropriate for school.
That prior,
Exactly.
that prior, the current policy deals with that very well.
So I actually think the new wording, the second, I guess it would be a second paragraph, is maybe more clear than the original, where it says students are encouraged to use sound judgment and reflect respect for themselves and others in dress and grooming, in keeping with the goals of the school unit to provide a safe, healthy, and non-discriminatory environment for educating students for maximum academic and social development. The following restrictions on dress shall be enforced. So it, like
It's
I
more
think Tina said,
specific.
yeah, I think actually that, this new language.
It's letting them know that
here are your limits.
This is the limits. You know, it's good to be yourself. It's good to express yourself, but we still have to remember that we're in school. We're not at a club or the beach.
Any other? Go ahead, Kathleen.
I object to skirt length and short length covering the butt. And I think it's confusing for students. If you're standing straight up and you have a skirt this length, it doesn't account for a bending over and I heard in the prior policy meeting that one mother said there was great anxiety dressing for her two daughters to school. And they didn't know whether they would be acceptable for the dress code or not. And I think it needs to be very clear. Either you you dress so that you know you're in the code. And I think even going up and down stairs or bending over, I think this is too short. My opinion.
I'm gonna do Natalie, then Tina. Oh, sorry.
So I had kind of questioned that first when I read it through, and then I was reading it again. And I actually, I'll say I have a daughter that's at the elementary school that's really tall. And I know a lot of us, like when I was in high school, it was still the fingertip rule. And, you know, depending on how you're built, that may be easier or not to find stuff that fits and that complies with a dress code. But I think this is really clear that shorts and or skirts I think the wording on this is actually, it needs to be flip-flopped, but shorts and or skirts must always fully cover the butt, regardless of if you're sitting, standing, walking up the stairs, walking down the stairs, doing a cartwheel, whatever you're doing, like it should your butt needs to be covered in school. I think that is pretty black and white.
Yeah, I second that because it's very specific. It needs to be covering at all times. So even if they are wearing a skirt or shorts, no matter the length, if their tushy is not covered, even when they're bending over, you know, that's a problem. That would be prohibited.
Yeah, go ahead.
To add on to that, as much as I guess we need to, if you listen to what's being said, we're always talking in technicalities. Well, it was covering my butt, is what we're going to hear. And what does that really mean? These are the kind of arguments that we get on a regular basis. I think, again, it needs to be the judgment of teachers and the administration to say, okay, if we say at all times it needs to be covering their butt, well, that's going to get tested. And I think that the administration is going to look at it and go, oh, no, that isn't going to work. And if you say, well, it needs to be 2 inches below the butt, now we're going to be arguing about whether we're going to be measuring skirts. I think if we are enforcing a policy that we have, I think administrators are going to look at that. They're going to teach their teachers. Tell me if I'm wrong, Pam. It's going to be, what is our standard? And we're not always going to get it right. The kids aren't always going to get it right. I agree with the language. What you're saying is at all times. There we go. Now it comes to the judgment of the adults in the room, so to speak. So again, I think policy is good as it stands.
Go ahead, Larry.
I agree with Brad that we could do technicalities all night long. Under the clothing, it says no midriff or torso showing at the high school. The lowest part of the neckline. What part of the neckline? Must meet the armpit. What part of the armpit? Will always cover the butt. Well, how far is that? All garments, all strapless garments. What is really strapless? I mean, we could go technical all night long and beat this up for the next 12 hours. At some point in time, we've got to say, this is it. We got to move on. And I'm going to make a motion that we accept it and move on.
All right, you make a motion for the first reading, and I will say with that change of must always.
I'll second Larry's motion with the language change.
Yeah. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Got that? Thank you. Moving on. Now, the next one is not a vote. It was brought to the policy meeting and we did a little discussion, but this is a very vital change because we do have the policy about library materials, media materials. We have exemption from required instruction, which means the curriculum. You know, we've had that, which is by law. If a person does not want their child to be something, they are given an alternative. That is, and I know Jason does it. They always let parents know heads up when something's like, you know, when they're going to do sexual education or whatever. So I know because that has been in place for many, many years. So we got this, I got this emailed, and I think she sent it, Kathleen, you sent it to the policy committee. Yep. And so, and like people said, you can see there's parts of our internet safety, which is true. It's required by law to have those things in place. So with the policy committee, I just felt we needed to have some kind of direction of, no, we're all set with what we have. Or are we going to delve? We need a direction. I need direction. We need
I have a
direction.
thought. First of all, as it stands, I think it should go to the policy committee and it should be discussed. I don't think there's a way to answer everybody's concerns, whether you are worried about the policy or not worried about the policy. And it seems in this room tonight, it's evident that there are more folks showing up worried about the policy. This is a tough one because I don't think, and I don't want to speak for Kathleen, and I full disclosure, I've had conversations with Kathleen about this policy well in advance of this. At no point did we talk about banning books like To Kill a Mockingbird, 1984, or any other of the books that were mentioned. I did notice tonight that the books that have raised the most concern fairly recently in the community were not mentioned, like Genderqueer, which is a book this school did not get banned. It was removed from the school. It wasn't banned. I don't think we're talking about book banning, and I don't think for a second Kathleen has ever talked about, yeah, we're going to get rid of all these really bad books, these classics. I think they should stay. I don't think we should ban books. Do I think we need to be selective about the books we bring into our school libraries? Yes, I do. What happens in the public library, what happens at the bookstore and all of that, that really is, I mean, we're talking about First Amendment rights for children under the age of 18. Those don't exist at all. It's their parents' rights. Children that are not age of majority don't have those rights, and even the 18-year-olds are not, within the context of the school, do not have those rights. I think we're talking about a bigger issue, which is a culture war. And I think there's board members that were sent here by their community to address a number of concerns. And they've got all kinds of different names, and indoctrination is one that comes up often. I've heard it from leadership, and I've heard it from teachers, and I hear it in the community. I personally don't think there's this massive indoctrination machine going on here at RSU 56. I didn't believe it before. The more time I spend on the board, the more I realize, I don't think that's the issue we have. I think the issue we have is we're asked to trust the professionals. And I have a very high regard for professionals. I'm a professional in a number of industries, and I want to be trusted. Somewhere along the line, the parents taking responsibility for making sure that school leadership, boards are aware of what their wants and needs are, they stop focusing on it. They're not doing it. The DOE, same way, they're not telling the Department of Education, national and on the state level. So what we have is very thoughtful people trying to take this in a direction where they think it's going to be supportive of children. So I don't think this is a book banning thing. There are discussions taking place in certain parts of this community and other communities where parents have said, I don't want that being discussed. And I guarantee you, it's not whether someone has an arm or a leg or a brain or is reading the classics. It has to do with very specific sexually explicit issues around gender. We can't seem to decide what a woman is, what a man is. We can't. We've decided that's subjective. We've made all of these things very controversial. So I think we need to discuss the kinds of material we have in school. I think we need to discuss the kinds of material being taught in our school. I think this policy is a step in that direction. But I'll leave it with this. By no means would I, as a board member, ever support in any way the removal of these classic books, of our teachers' ability to be able to say, I think that's appropriate to the curriculum, but I do think we need to get clear as it comes to gender issues. All of those things have become very hot topics, and it's dividing us, but it has to be discussed. And I think Mr. Nolet had said, I hope you have a thoughtful dialogue and conversation, and that needs to happen. And it probably needs to happen outside this board as well. So I'll leave it with that.
Go ahead, Larry.
The issue is not centered around books themselves, but pornography in the library. And I have very short, imagine that, a very short reading. This discussion should be tabled for 3 reasons. 1, this is a moot point considering that the Maine Department of Education has been required by statute on this very point. Be it enacted by the people of the state of Maine as follows. Under section 120A MRSA section 4010, it is enacted pornography restrictions. An elementary or secondary school in the state may not allow a person under 18 years of age to access obscene, pornographic, or any other material that may be harmful to a person under 18 years of age through the use of a computer or computer service of that school. The summary: the bill prohibits an elementary or secondary school from allowing a person under 18 age to access the same thing. 2, the Supreme Court has already made a ruling on the banning of these books. 1982, Board of Education versus Pico, the United States Supreme Court rules that the school board's decision to remove books from a school library based simply on the content violates the First Amendment's free speech right. The court says the First Amendment protects the right to receive information and ideas. 3rd, and I think this is one of the most important things why I would say that we table this motion tonight. There were some very eloquent, powerful, and well-versed comments tonight, and I thank everybody for doing that. But this is the 3rd reason and the most important reason that we need to have this tabled. And now, the 3rd reason, the board needs to hear from all participants involved, especially those who are being criticized for, according to the minority, allowing pornography in RSU 56, and that be the school librarians. They should have a forum to educate the board and public on how they vet books, how they follow Department of Education guidelines, and most importantly, why this is just another distraction. In my opinion, this is just an end run to ban books. RSU 56 has already safeguards for this frivolous and otherwise another attempt to undermine public education holistic and to divide communities. This small minority continues to attempt to dismantle anything that RSU 56 has in place that does not benefit them. We should be concentrating on issues that affect all students. For example, vaping. This is just another wrecking ball against what is the good for the majority, all students, and RSU 56. So in order to have a well-rounded discussion, this should be tabled until the next meeting or at the convenience of the library staff of RS 56.
Thank you, Larry. Tim?
Excuse me. I think we have a policy in place already. And I'm just curious what prompted this to come forward. Are we having issues?
Tina, go ahead.
Hi, I'd love to add to that because I've had a lot of parents over the last several years who have complained. And I have a lot, I don't think it's about banning books either. I think it's using more judgment. And I have a lot of questions to go around this. There, a lot of people were referencing the banning of the Bible. Is there a Bible in our library? Is there a Holy Bible in the school library?
There are 3 Bibles.
There are 3? Perfect. Okay. Have the people who keep referencing, have you guys read the Bible? The whole Bible? You took a class. Have you read the whole Bible? That's a no. So I think that's interesting because I think that would kind of go along with what parents are complaining about. When this comes down to it, I know some of you are parents. I think that's great. How many staff members are in RSU 56? That was another question I had.
So the total, we employ about 176.
176, and you had 18 signatures of that 176. So did you get everyone's opinions? Okay, so 18 of those though. Okay. All right.
Just to answer your question,
Yep.
there are 4 Bibles.
Yeah, that's what they told me. That's great.
Yeah.
And then the list when you're ordering your books yearly, you're going off of recommendations from a list that was recommended, or?
I am using my professional judgment. For clarity, I am 3 credits away from a master's in library information science, so I'm very qualified to select materials, and I was chosen by the board to do so.
Okay.
I don't just go off of one list. I spend a lot of time on collection development. I've taken several classes on collection development and selecting materials.
Awesome.
It's not
So you're
just
not
me.
going
I'm
off
not just
one
doing what other
recommend-
people tell
not
me.
one off so
Yeah.
not
She
just
was not
one
called to the
recommended
stand.
list.
No,
kind of
no.
thing.
So,
Okay.
Tina, I know you want your answer.
Yeah, I guess I have a lot of background questions. So I don't think, obviously classics, I would never
No.
even think same thing, but you know, we're going back to, laws that he's stating that don't really, they're not specific. I mean, there's federal laws in place. Section 2258 of Title 18 of the United States Code defines that child pornography and any visual depiction of sexual explicit contact involving a minor it's against the law. It's against the law. I'm just pointing that out because we could go back and forth on this all night, but there are laws in
This
place.
is why I would like to, this is why I'd like to.
So, but I
table tonight.
think I agree.
Stop. Tina's speaking, and I want her to finish.
Right.
Thank you.
I feel like we need a lot more discussion, and parents do have the right to know what their kids are learning.
Absolutely.
Is there a full list? Of
But
our
the
library
thing that
content?
I want to say, which to remind board members, when you get a complaint, it's in the contract and it's in even our policy, whether it's a parent, an employee, there's the procedure. And if we don't follow it, that's what happens when you get a lot of complaints. You say, well, how many do you know, but they stop. And that's what Brad brought up, something about the community, which what we're trying to work with on our goals and visions is to get the community. Because I agree, a parent should know what their children are reading. And I don't think that process, and I don't blame staff because things have evolved
I
to
just don't know.
where it's like pulling teeth, but they should be aware of the curriculum. I went to open houses. We have the curriculum committee, which can go which I think would be a great place to go for the curriculum, to have that with the librarian of the process.
I agree. I think it needs more discussion.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. And I'm not some pro on the curriculum committee. But help me understand this, and maybe Pam, you can help too. When people are saying, well, it's in the school, the statement often is, well, it's not part of the curriculum. It is an extracurricular group activity. You know, is it safe to say librarians and teachers that the books aren't part of the curriculum necessarily, like the ones in the library? Is that fair?
Well, they're used for part of the curriculum research and stuff.
Yeah. But it's not necessarily, they're not all integrated. Like the Bible is not integrated into a class. So again, with the technicality piece, I think we should be careful because, well, it's not part of the curriculum. I think from my experience and what I hear out in the community is there are things in the school that fairly universally, regardless of whether you are left or right, parents find kind of revolting and are saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that was in my school. Well, I say get more involved, right? You know, become aware. And that's a double-edged sword. But nonetheless, the discussion has to happen. And for my opinion here, I don't think this policy, tell me if I'm wrong, Kathleen, I don't think this policy is the purpose of being a prude to ban all things because I personally don't like all these somewhat unsavory things. I think this is a very explicit issue around, well, like what Larry says, pornography in the schools. We all going to have a little different opinion what is pornography and what is not.
Which is exactly why I said we table this and let the librarians vent.
I don't
get
disagree
that.
there.
Yeah.
There needs to be more discussion. What I'm saying,
why we discuss that
is we would do well to get down to the brass tacks of what's driving the policy. I'm not saying I disagree with the policy at this point. I'd never want to ban books, but I think we got to not dance around it. Why the hell is this policy here? What's driving it? And I think what's driving it is parents are telling board members, this is happening all over America, that they don't like what they refer to as indoctrination in the school. I don't agree that it's indoctrination, especially at this school. We need to get down to the brass tacks of it.
All right.
What is driving this?
I'm gonna do Pam. Tim, are you all done? I'll say Pam, then Dawn.
I just want to state that I think that the perception of what's happening in schools is not the same as the reality of what's happening in schools. And we've worked really hard in RSU 56 to be clear and open. So at any point in time on our website, you can access the full catalog of what's in our libraries. Additionally, on the websites for both the middle school and the high school, they have the list of every class and the books that they used in that class. So there should be no surprises to parents or community members of what's being taught and what's here at Derigo High School. So I think, unfortunately, what's happening is there's a societal division happening that is being brought in here that isn't necessarily even happening in here. We have very professional people choosing what books to put in front of our kids at all grade levels in our district. And we have a policy that states how we select curricular and library materials. We have a process in place if somebody feels the book is not appropriate, that is being used in a class where we do alternate assignments, or if it's in the library, there's a process where it can actually be removed from the library. And we've gone through that. So it works. So I think we're kind of spinning our wheels on something that's happening in society, but not maybe necessarily inside the schools of RSU 56.
Yeah, I'm looking at this section 2246 title HE. This is not really anything that we should be discussing because, like Pam just said, we have gone through this with one book. That book was very specific. What you're trying to do is throw this out here to ban a lot of books. We're not here to ban books. I think we're wasting time. I personally have got better things to do than sit here and argue over this.
So I probably should have organized my thoughts more than I did. So apologies that I don't have a written statement that is eloquent and really thoughtful. So I've just been sitting here jotting notes as we've kind of been chatting. And first, I know they stepped out probably because it's a school night, but I appreciate that we had students that really spoke eloquently. So kudos to the English teachers and everybody that are working with those students because they did a great job and that took courage. So I appreciate that they voiced their thoughts and their concerns. I guess my thought on this, probably similar to Dawn's, I think words matter and I think policies matter. And there's a reason that policies are vetted, that MSMA has a staff that develops with legal input, a policy handbook that districts can reference and work from and then customize to kind of fit their local conditions and their local situation. And regardless of what the initial intent was, again, words matter. And in the proposed policy, it says that no book shall be in the library or used that, and then it has bullet points that have nudity or sex or, so while the intent maybe, isn't to ban a book, what happens, every decision has a result, right? Like that there are maybe implications that we hadn't considered, or maybe they were considered. But I guess when I look at this, I just don't see that there's any reason. We have a set of vetted policies regarding selection of materials, challenging materials. Again, that particular policy has been utilized here. This board has seen that. The community, I think, is pretty well aware that policy exists because that was pretty well publicized as well. So I don't disagree with Brad that there's a tremendous culture war going on around us, and I don't disagree that parents should be involved and have questions about what their kids are learning. I appreciate the transparency of the district. I appreciate that anytime I've had questions about my own kids' education, I've had the opportunity to ask those questions and get answers. And I guess my thought is, let's stay the course. Let's utilize the policies we have in place. If we feel that there is an issue, let's revisit those policies and let's see where they need to be addressed. I don't disagree that at the curriculum committee level, perhaps there needs to be some further discussion where there's concerns. But I guess I have pretty serious concerns about a very broad policy where it says that no books in the library or in our curriculum should fall in here, because I think there's a lot of unintended consequences there, and a lot of materials that, I mean, I learned from, my mom probably learned from. Like, I mean, there's materials that have been around for quite a long time and that have been an established foundation for curriculum and education, the classics that I may probably the intent wasn't to touch them, but the reality is that they are. And it's not just in an English or literature classroom, a language classroom, it is in your art classrooms. It touches all of our subjects at different levels. So I guess my thought would be, let's utilize the policies that we have in place. Where there are concerns, let's have dialogue on the concerns. I have no question about that. I think thoughtful dialogue is always a good thing. When folks are involved, you know, that's when we make progress, and that's good for our district and for our kids. But I guess I don't think that this policy helps us make progress in any area.
Yeah. So we removed genderqueer from the library, and it went back to the review committee and they said it was fine. And I think we need,
So the review committee came first. They
Yes,
recommended it was
yeah.
okay. And then per policy, then it went to the board and the board reviewed it and they removed it from the library.
Right, absolutely. So I think we need to consider community standards, and I don't think parents have the ability or time to monitor every book in the library. And so I think there would, and I'm not saying this policy is the golden one. I thought we would discuss it in the policy committee, but I think taxpayers and parents and educators and the board have a mission to provide the best education possible for given the available resources. And I think explicit sexual content is not mission appropriate. And some of these books, and I'm not talking about the classics, but some of these, if you handed a student that outside in the park, you would go to jail. And I think it needs to be discussed more. And I'm really tired of the banning books narrative. These books are still printed, they're available anywhere, they're not banned. And the school board, the superintendent, principal, teachers, as well as parents and taxpayers have an obligation to provide the best education possible given available resources. There are, of course, limits of time, space, and money. Those limits favor excellence in the choice of learning materials. Are we in agreement that choices are made by school districts? Are the materials not chosen banned? I don't think so. Or are they inappropriate to the purpose, or maybe other materials are superior? The banned book narrative ignores the fact that we daily make choices for materials that are effective and promote excellence in learning. And I strongly stand against censorship, but I was really happy that genderqueer was removed from the library.
Okay. Just a reminder, we did discuss it in policy. There was 4 of us there. And there was no way, and I can't speak for Larry or for Liz, when you have 4 people, this kind of policy is nowhere near anything I could think of to bring forward for a first reading. Because I know it is a very, very, and we've done that in the past. When there's policies, you know, you need the whole board input. And that is something we definitely needed. All right, I'm going to do Larry, then Brad. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Kathleen just supported my whole theory of we should table this. She just attacked the librarian saying they're putting pornography in there and we got to stop it. We need to have them educate the board to tell us how they vet the books, how they follow the Department of Education, and how they put the books into the library. This is a one-way argument. So I think that I'm going to support one more time that we've tabled. We can have one little thing.
Okay, something new.
Pardon?
Something new. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just.
Okay.
She opened the door.
No, but we need to move on. I want to hear.
Okay. Well, I do have one more thing that I wanted to segue over there.
Okay.
It's an NPR article, June 2nd, 2023. We've all seen the headlines about bans, school board short fest, and the new laws how to limit teachers that can talk about gender identity or racism. America is deeply divided, and those fissures are ripping through the classroom with teachers trapped straddling the chasms. Parents and teachers and general and public agree educators are overworked and underpaid, but this is the most important thing. Americans say that they trust teachers to make classroom decisions, but it's complicated. With the stories these days about parents and activists challenging teachers over a host of classroom issues, you might think that trust in teacher is low. That couldn't be it's farther from the truth. 3/4 of the parents and the general public agree that teachers are professionals and should be trusted to make decisions about classroom curriculum. And this attacking people over that has to stop.
All right. I'm going to do Brad. Okay, Tina, then Brad.
Just a side note, on the high school website, there is no list of library. It's got an error, and it does on the elementary as well. All that's available is the middle school one. So that should
Wasn't
probably
that still there? Okay. That will get rectified.
It will be rectified.
Error.
It will be rectified. It's been up there before.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brad.
Hi. First of all, I have a question you can maybe answer, Barb. I'd like to see this go to a policy meeting discussion. I think, with a thoughtful discussion, we can come out of there with either we should move forward or we should table it and be done with it. Can I make a motion for that? Do we need a motion? So no motion needed. Okay.
Do you feel it needs to go back to the policy committee?
First of all, I do. Yes. Yeah. No decisions get made there. It's just do we. Okay. Yeah.
1, 2, 3. You guys want it? Okay. Clarity. The clarity is, do you want it to go back to the policy committee, or do you want it? It's like Natalie said, done.
Before we put it to the policy committee, I'd like the librarian to educate the board on how they vet and how they follow the rules of that. So I think we should hear it before we go back to policy committee to redo that.
Participate in the discussion.
Oh, they're always welcome.
Then that might be the place. Now it will be the whole board.
Well, you
would. It will be, and then other board members can attend. If you're on the policy committee, I don't know, can they participate? I don't think
they can, but they can't vote.
I'm saying that they put it to the open board. That way we're educated. We're not just hearing the one-sided conversation tonight.
I totally agree. I think if they were to attend, anybody
I think they should have a presentation.
Yes.
Just like the,
Okay.
I think that would be appropriate.
like the principals have an
All right.
education, the librarian should educate us on how they put it, how
All
she's
right.
not putting it in it.
Well, I'm gonna leave it where we will do, Don, go ahead first.
I get a little confused, which is normal, but,
Join the club.
I don't know. See, you want to go back to the policy committee, but then it was gonna come back to the full board anyways. If we
Correct.
Take a vote tonight with the board if they're interested in that.
Well, I'm going to say I try to do a consensus because it's not up for first reading. It hasn't even been vetted by, because all are legal. Every one of these been through legal. What I'm trying to get is, do you want it? And it doesn't include further discussion, not excluding the librarians' presentation, which I think is a very excellent idea.
You bet.
So they did pretty good, and she's done that 2-3 times.
No, they
But the people-
they didn't tell us how they vet the books and how they follow the Department of Education guidelines and protocols, so they could not put pornography in the classroom. That's what they're saying tonight, that there's pornography in the classroom.
Okay.
I don't think there is, because I
All
want to
right.
hear from them.
I think we should go, because we used to have presentations all the time from different sections. We could have it because there's the chance we're not attacking them. Because personally, like they said, we hired them. We raised our hand and hired these people, and that's their job. So and I do think the perception is, what I'm trying to get, because it's not a first reading, is if we do that first, and then I will probably put a vote whether to go back to the policy committee. That way it's clearly defined. So I don't know if you can set it up for December's meeting or not. Just to get, because the more information you get, the better.
Even if we had one representative come that would represent the group, that
I would
easier
assume,
than 7.
yeah, I assume it would be the librarian staff. The librarians, well, I meant how many, there's 2, that's right. I used to forget that. And okay, Carl.
Didn't you say she's 4 credits away from a master's?
Yes.
That's probably going to be finals here in a couple of weeks. Maybe you should put it in January or something.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure we all set, understand?
I have one last thing.
Go ahead.
I'm sure everybody's excited. I agree. We should have this meeting and we should hear what the standards are and how things are vetted. I would venture to say that if we were to address very specific books in the library that I know have been identified, there are lists circulating which do talk about issues like genderqueer. Okay, it's not just the imagery, it's also the messages delivered. And I remember very specifically listening to the board in the back of the room say that they wanted that book to be voted out because they worried about the health concerns. It had nothing to do with pornography. It had nothing to do with anything but quote unquote health concerns. And I remember that very specifically.
I was one of those.
Right.
But I knew I just said pictures.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
I'm not saying that that
was
covers everybody's thoughts, but that was the theme of the vote. Okay, so the book goes. I would venture to say that you could satisfy a lot with the laws in place, our rules in place. I think you could satisfy a lot of the issues that if we addressed some very specific books, which by the way, don't include the classics at all. It doesn't include art class. It doesn't include any of those important books, the Bible, all this stuff. It includes books that are in the same vein as genderqueer. Okay. We're talking about gender issues, sexuality issues that parents really feel belong at home. If we were to do that, if we were to address the posters in the hall that talk about Gender 101, okay, I've seen those posters. I've seen posters in the library door that have some implications that books are being kept from students. I think if we were to address some of those things, that would settle people down a lot.
Since we have a direction, we're gonna move on. And you got a copy of Brad, sorry. You got a copy of a policy we have done. I think we did it once years ago of self-evaluation process. And I think what Pam, I'm gonna have you speak because you brought it up. I thought we had it. I know it's here somewhere.
I put the policy for the board self-evaluation in with your packets. And I just need you to decide how you want to go about that, because it doesn't lay out like it's going to be done in a certain way.
I have a question. Is this required by statute?
No, it's policy.
Is it a rule that board members need to comply with? Or a process that we are required to?
Well, we would have to go to the policy and
No, I've never seen it. I mean, I can.
Yes.
Just said here we're gonna do a self.
Doesn't mean when we do it, but
Okay, thank you.
yeah, because I'm thinking, because some are still new, if we do it like, I don't know, before budget or after budget or before. I'm trying to think what's worse. By the end of budget, we're tired. It's June.
Is this a public conversation?
It can be, it's a form you fill out and it's just, like correlate and then have like a discussion of which we've done workshops before, just say, okay, what do we need to work on? It's not about pointing fingers. It's more about, figuring out, okay, what do we need to work on for, like, is our meetings long or is this, or we don't get enough information. Correct.
There's no voting. There's
there's no voting, no nothing on that.
Okay, I'm interested.
Okay. Maybe it's February. When do you start the presentations?
The budget presentations?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll be February.
Okay. So we have 2 meetings in January.
Yes, we do.
If we get it out and if we can just correlate, it doesn't have any names or anything, review, and we could have a discussion about what is prevalent, what is the perceptions. A lot of it is perceptions too. So, and learning. So
to be clear, as your
Hey,
secretary,
thank you.
am I sending this out through like a Google form and you're going to do it? And then we're going to have the results that you'll discuss in an open format?
That sounds great.
Okay, I wanted to know, is everybody okay with Google? Even though I fight with it, but oh. And also, yeah, and if it attaches, then it gets longer and you lose it. Okay, I thought it was only one. No, I get in trouble with that. Oh, I have trouble finding it after because of the attachments. Okay, we got that. That was new. Okay, Brian was a bust. All right. I like Brian. He knows. Hey, he went to school here. Brian was a bust. All right, number 5, approval for overnight wrestling meet at Noble High School. Could I get a motion?
Make a motion, we approve it.
And a second?
I second it.
You got information, I presume?
Sean, is Mr. Carver's online?
I am.
Perfect. Go ahead and speak.
Go, dear, go.
Hip hip. So this is not the presentation part though, Sean. Sorry. This is just me basically talking about that we're just going to repeat the same thing that we did last year. So I presented to the board last year about the Noble Invitational. So it's a 2-day wrestling tournament that we participate in during Christmas break. We're going to be doing basically the same procedure as we did last year. They'll be staying overnight in a hotel. We're going to have the proper guardianship and the amount of hotel rooms that's needed based on the individuals that are actually going to be able to participate. Those dates are Wednesday, December 27th through Thursday, December 28th. So they will be leaving bright and early on the 27th and will be returning probably in the early evening, latter part of the evening on the 28th.
Hey, any questions for Nick? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, you get to deal with me again for a presentation.
he is. All right, we got a minute. Is nobody here for Region 9?
So Region 9 hasn't met since last time, so Bruce will come on for the December meeting. And the strategic planning update, I just wanted to remind everybody, you should have received one of these little postcards in the mail. Everybody in our 4 towns received them, and it's just asking them for input into the strategic planning process. Perfect.
Too, but I haven't done that.
So I would encourage everybody to fill out that Google form, and that gives us information that the strategic planning team will use. It also gives information about December 16th from 9 to 11 right here in the cafeteria to come in and give some more community input into the strategic planning process.
I'm
Shall I move
sorry,
right on?
I'm in Texas.
So while Barbara's taking a deep breath, I'll just move into the superintendent's report. I do want to be clear with the board that I was contacted by News Center earlier today to talk about what was happening at our board meeting tonight. I tried really hard to explain to them that this was not about a motion. This was about the board making decisions on whether or not they wanted to move forward, looking at a policy that basically came from one person that hadn't been vetted or anything at this point in time. So tried to keep it pretty generic. I saw it quickly. My husband sent it to me. So I think again, it's too bad that 56 is in the news over these things, but I think it was a pretty neutral, my words are neutral. The overall story was again about 56 trying to ban books. So the spin on it is anyway. I want to remind you that the superintendent's evaluation is done annually. It's due in December. So Kathy has sent out a Google form for you to evaluate the superintendent. She put up 4 fingers, so I'm assuming that means 4 people have filled it out. It's really important that you put your information in, and then we will be an executive session in December at the December meeting to go over the superintendent's evaluation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The last time I was on the board, I actually refused to fill out the evaluation. So if there was one, it was me. I will not fill out the evaluation again this time. And there's a reason for this, and I didn't know where the proper form was. And this statement is not about Pam's performance at all. I find that, and I've read through the questions, I find that we have to evaluate a superintendent, which we don't observe nearly 100% of the time. That the questions it asks requires us to have awareness around activities and behaviors that we have zero insight. We have rumor. And rumor is useless. I don't want to evaluate our superintendent on a rumor, whether that is great statements or not great statements. I don't think it's a fair process. I don't think it's an appropriate way to evaluate our superintendent. I can't imagine putting an answer to a question I don't have any insight into. Like, for instance, how does our superintendent interact with our staff? What is her leadership like? We may see the end result, and again, no statement about Pam. It may appear everything's great, but how do we know? Like, how do you formally evaluate? We as board members. Well, but I mean, but we're not asking our staff. So I always think a culture survey is a really good indicator of what it is that your staff members can answer anonymously. I think it's important. I've talked about this in the strategic plan. I think a culture survey is important. But I just don't know, like, how do you do this? Like, and Barb, my question for you would be specifically, is, are you spending the time evaluating Pam based on those? I don't know if it's your role. Evaluate.
I mean, I see because I have a lot of interaction.
You would.
And you see more if you're on a committee like negotiations. We see the
Right.
staff interaction. When you're on the curriculum, you know, Jason runs it, but she's right there. It's not anything new that because that's why we actually put not aware of, because you're not, if you're not doing a lot of the stuff. We did get, which I haven't read yet, there's a new policy about evaluating the superintendent, which, by the way, you know, when we do it, but if we change what we do, you know, she has input, you can't just legally. But they also sent us, was it 20 pages? It was a very long document about how to evaluate your superintendent. And we actually brought up a little bit about I looked at the new MSMA policy and I go, holy mother of God. And then I looked at their pamphlet and I go, well, this is something that really needs to be, it's got to be vetted. It's got to be, you know, it's going to take a process. Yes, it's going to take a lot, because what I always use too is my comments. You know, I comment on, like, when we see her do a budget and the finance, you know, the finance committee, you know, that's one thing I can honestly say. We have awesome Mary, but Pam knows every nickel and dime and how much, and Mary goes, how do you know that? And so, which is very unusual, but I love it because, you know, we're such a very tight budget. But that's the only thing. It's not anything new. People say, I don't know.
Well, I know it's an old process. I
Yeah,
I
but
guess
they
I'd
don't know.
make a recommendation. I
But
still don't feel comfortable filling out the eval. Again, it has nothing to do with Pam. I don't care who's sitting in the seat. I think that if the questions were geared more towards our very real interactions, are you on a policy committee? And I agree. You know, Pam knows her stuff. There's no question. But it also, maybe we ought to add the element of a culture survey. And to be more specific, what that is an evaluation by the staff at all levels. It's an evaluation by leadership staff. It's anonymous, and all of the information is anonymized independently outside of the district. Usually there's organizations that do that. The board would then get to see that feedback, and there's discussions to be had to how you address issues that are real. Anyway, I just think a change is needed.
Okay, I do agree that change, but we only have this and we have to do, and we do have a meeting where we go into executive and discuss things. But any change we do, they have to be aware of, and I don't know, yes. Meaning I don't know if you have to approve, but you have to be part of the process. There's laws on that one. Yeah, so, okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes, you can.
So as Sean is setting up for Mr. Carvis, I just will report out that Dakota Tompkins was hired as the Derigo High School boys JV basketball coach, and James Gronwald, who's a bus driver custodian, is resigning effective November 29th, 2023, as he's moving out of state.
I had one note that someone had commented this afternoon that we've missed one stipend position reporting out. Interviews and selections have been made just prior to our last board meeting, but I think that we have a cheering coach that hasn't been run by the board.
Mr. Carvis, and I talked about this right after I sent out the amended agenda. And because the board doesn't have to act on them, he is going to report them in his report, and then I will put them officially on the December agenda.
Why don't we have a football cheerleading?
So that has been out of the budget for since before I started. So it's a
long time ago.
It would be something that would need to be considered.
I just noticed that we don't have cheerleaders. I was like,
yeah. We had them for maybe 2 years, and then middle school did it.
Also, I thought we were supposed to have a pep band this year, and that didn't happen either.
So we do have a pep band. And there were unfortunate circumstances that kept the pep band from performing this year, but we certainly hope that will happen again pretty soon.
Just curious. Thank you.
That's actually a perfect transition into my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me because I might not hear or see. So just make sure to do that. As Natalie said, we have two positions actually that haven't been reported out yet. And that would be the varsity cheerleading coach, which is Caitlin Woods. She works at DES. And then our JV girls basketball coach at the high school is Tom Kelly, who is a custodian bus driver for RSU 56. So we're really excited to have them on board, and they will be officially reported out at the next board meeting. All right, next slide. So I'm going to start as the assistant principal for Dirigo High School and just kind of go through some disciplinary reporting. So at this time, for August through November, we have 135 total referrals at Dirigo High School. At this time last year in 22-23, we had 108. And then we have the referrals by behavior. Skipping is our top one, a close second. As you can see within that graph, there's like little M's. Those are minors that are kind of staff managed before they get to the administrative level for disciplinary action. So as you can see, it kind of goes up all the way through the disrespect, defiance, and then skipping is our top one. Next slide. So these were the interesting, I still have a mathematical mind at heart. So these are a few bar graphs that I thought were interesting, where the referrals by day kind of looks like a bell curve with Monday and then growing to Tuesday, Wednesday being your peak, and then kind of going down, and Thursday and Friday are kind of plateauing out. The referrals by grade, relatively even. Our 11th grade had a little bit more than the rest. The referrals per day per month was just comparing last year to this year with us using this Swiss apps at the high school. And the blue is this year and the green is obviously last year. So they're relatively similar ish. And then the referrals by time of day, we see again a little bit of a bell curve where it increases towards lunchtime and then kind of decreases after. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk about the truancy as I'm the truancy officer as well. So within our first quarter, we had two students who were on that truancy reporting, which is through October 1st. And then I wanted to talk about the steps that I take with truancy. So I connect with families after 5 days that they're missing, and then it's 7 days in a row or 10 total that you actually become truant. And those are full days that you're missing out of school for more than 50% of the day. I then connect with families to schedule meetings to determine the next steps to identify areas that they might need for success continuing on. And then I continue to monitor and support the students along with staff members across our entire district that help out with making sure that we are providing as much support as we possibly can to our students to ensure that they have future success. And then I think the next slide is going to go into my athletic director. Yep. So I'm going to start by thanking, these are all there's so many people that I want to thank within the community for making Dirigo athletics possible. Our student athletes are the basis of it. They do an extremely well-rounded job on, off the court, field, so on and so forth. No matter where they are, they're a good representation of our community. Our parents and guardians, we wouldn't be able to have student athletes without their support, along with their families. Our community members that I see showing up to all the games and, rooting on our student athletes consistently across the board is extremely nice to see and be a part of within this community. Our board members, seeing so many board members show up to, a plethora of games, soccer, field hockey, football, It's hard to get to a golf match, especially when they're a little bit farther away. But it's really nice to see our golfers at like the New England qualifier. Is really nice to see how excited they were and supportive of one another. Our Dirigo Athletics Boosters is a huge part of our success and always willing to help out and support with anything that our teams or individual student athletes or anybody really needs. Our coaching staff is terrific here at Dirigo. I couldn't thank them enough or think of a better group to work with on the athletic side. Our transportation department, with as many changes that happen last minute, they are never too mad at me to make sure that we can give our students what they need to ensure that they get to their matches, games, competitions, practices, so on and so forth. So I wanted to give a huge shout out to bus drivers, Terry and Kenny. The groundskeeping, like our fields and our facilities are incredible because we take so much pride in them, and it wouldn't be able to be done without especially Jay and Aaron and Randy and Sean, Richard, Scott, everybody that helped out. We got so many compliments on our facilities that it was a realization that when you go to another place and you become very appreciative of the people that work with you to make sure that we take pride in what we have here at Dirigo. And then the custodians and staff members and administration and everybody else that helps out with things and supports our student athletes to make sure that we keep them going and keep that like mindset of holding their community strong and their pride within their community is really great. Next slide. So just to go through some of our high school student athlete participation, we had 13 cross country, football is 32, boys soccer was 11. Esports I'm going to share shortly. The golf, we had 6, field hockey 21, and girls soccer we had 18. So it was extremely, I love the fact that we had 101 total student athletes during the course of the fall season at the high school out of 233. So we had around 43% participation within our athletics, which is pretty incredible. Next slide. Our event summary. So we had 13 scheduled and 2 canceled for cross country, 20 and 1 for field hockey. Football had 11 varsity, 5 JV, and 2 JV canceled events. And that those aren't canceled events because of us. It was either weather or, and this goes for all of our canceled events. It was a lot of the times the other teams or a course or weather, so on and so forth. Golf had 11 with 1 canceled. Girls soccer had 16 with 1 canceled in the preseason, and boys soccer had 17 with 0 canceled. Our end of season, our cross country running was at regionals and states. Field hockey was at regional semifinals. Football was at semifinals and the regionals. Golf went to the MVC qualifier. Girls soccer was at the regional quarterfinals, and our boys soccer made it to the regional semifinals. So we had some great representation of Dirigo across all of our athletic programs. Next slide. So our season awards, I just wanted to make sure that I gave all of them a shout out. I'm just going to list their names really quick. Girls soccer, Sophie got 2nd team. Boys soccer, the honorable mention was Dalton, Ethan, and Travis. Golf, we had honorable mention of Eli and Logan. Cross country, 1st team girls, Mackenzie. 1st team boys was Williams. 2nd team was Stetson, and honorable mention was Mitchell. Field hockey, 1st team was Libby and Emily. 2nd team was Grace. Honorable mention, Lana and Sylvia. Player of the year for the entire MVC for field hockey was Libby Arrington. Football, 1st team was Nathaniel, Brady, Tanner, and Isaiah. 2nd team, Owen and Dakota. And we had an assistant coach of the year with Chris for football. And at the Main Field Hockey Association all-state level, Libby and Emily got the all-state awards. Where they're able to have a banquet actually here coming up in December. And then academic all-state for Main Field hockey was Libby. And we had 2 academic all-stars with a GPA of 90 or above all 4 years of their high school of Libby and Logan. So pretty incredible group, as you can see. And we had some incredible representation across the board of Dirigo within the MVC. Next slide. So our esports summary, we're starting to get more traction within esports as the season has progressed. So we were able to provide opportunities for students who have not participated in any type of activity at Deergo High School previously, which last year when I gave the presentation about esports, that was one of the points of emphasis, is that it definitely brings more of our students in and gets them occupied with some type of activity. We're starting to even continue to grow interest within the fields associated with esports for future careers. I've had conversations about coding with kids or about illustration, so on and so forth. Students have been researching and asking questions about the different types of activities that the MPA sanctions. So that's really incredible with the computer systems, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to offer. We're able to offer opportunities without having an impact on the current budget. And then within a later board meeting, hopefully in December or January, I will be requesting for esports to be offered within the spring 2024 season based on how well it went with this fall season. Next slide. So our middle school student athletes at cross country level, we had 12. Field hockey, we had 24. And then between our boys and girls soccer, we had 33. Keep in mind that there are programs offered through Ditchfield Rec that students are able to participate in, that kind of, when they choose to do that, it might be at the same exact time as one of the programs that we offer. So we had a total amount of 69 student athletes out of 234, and that includes the 5th grade class, because we are now able to offer all of our athletic programs at the middle school to 5th grade, which is incredible. So we had a total percentage participating of just around 29%. Next slide. So across our events, we had 8 scheduled and 3 canceled towards the beginning of the season for cross country. And then field hockey had 15-0, and then soccer had 12-0. And field hockey made it all the way to the regional semifinals as well, which was pretty incredible experience for them. Next slide. I just want to give another shout out to everybody that helped us with supporting the Lewiston tribute, because it was a pretty incredible experience to be a part of as an athletic director. And I can't thank everybody who was involved enough about that, because it was really hard for me to keep my composure during the course of the game, just because there were so many individuals from both the Deergo and Maranico communities, and then beyond, that reached out afterwards, just thanking us for taking the time that we did. And if you haven't already seen that tribute that we did, it's on the Deergo Athletics Facebook page, and it was pretty incredible. So thank you everybody for being involved in that. Next slide. So my projections for next year as the athletic director at Deergo, so I project on a 4-year window with athletic programs and sustainability. And so based on the projections from this fall, I'm thinking at the high school, cross country, esports, field hockey, football, golf, girls soccer, and boys soccer at 8-person, and then middle school, cross country, field hockey, and soccer, both boys and girls. Next slide. This is probably one of the biggest points of emphasis that I kind of was thinking about during the course of the fall season. And this is in reference to football here at Deergo. So when Deergo initially transitioned from 11-person to 8-person classification in football, it was with the intent of building the program, which is similar to other athletic programs throughout the state of Maine, to eventually go back to the 11-person classification. For the fall of 2024 declaration, we are needing to submit our declaration by December 1st, which is in a few days. There are multiple programs throughout the state that are determining their declaration regarding 8-person or 11-person classifications. And with our sustained numbers, so we're averaging around 8 to 12 athletes per grade throughout the Deergo High School program, as well as the Dixfield Rec program, which is the grades 5 through 8, and even goes lower than that with 3rd and 4th, and 1st and 2nd. And we are projecting that we will have approximately 40 student athletes within the Deergo High School football program over the next 4 years. And that's an average every year of approximately 40 student athletes. And the 4 years is the MPA guidance with projecting your sustainability. And when a district that is sanctioned by the MPA declares which classification they are projecting, the decision is then put forth in front of an advisory committee for approval through the MPA. Next slide. So if we declare that the Deergo Athletics football program will go back to the 11-person classification, we would be competing with teams that have similar enrollment numbers as well as student athletes on their rosters. The development of our programs depends on the possibility of having junior varsity games. The junior varsity games provide developmental stages for student athletes, and we haven't been able to necessarily offer regularly scheduled JV games just because of the other teams that we're playing against. Either they don't have a team or they're traveling 2.5 hours and they can't sustain it, so on and so forth. The 11-person classification would allow for more opportunity for our student athletes to participate within JV games to better develop or to further develop our program. And within our local area, there are multiple schools that we would be able to obtain a more solidified schedule for our JV programs. And then in referencing the travel, we would actually be decreasing the amount of total travel overall based on the current classification schools within our area that are considered to be the 11-person programs. Next slide. So there will be some challenges by transitioning back to the 11-person classification, such as a learning curve, but I have full trust in our coaching staff that we currently have, that we will be able to implement this transition appropriately for our student athletes, which is another reason why I invited Craig Collins, our varsity football coach, to this meeting, if there was any specific questions at the end of this. And then this transition will also allow for more student athletes to participate at the varsity level, just due to the amount of players that you have on a field at a time, because 11-person versus 8-person. Staying within the 8-person classification with our roster size would not necessarily allow for student athletes to participate as much as they would with 11-person. And student athlete involvement is key with the development of our athletic programs within all levels of practices, scrimmages, competitions, so on and so forth. So based on this information, I've thought about it a lot. I've had a lot of conversations with our coaching staff and with the MPA. I would support for declaring that the Deergo Athletics football program will classify as an 11-person program within the fall 2024 season. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I welcome any kind of questions and or comments from anybody.
I'll do Tina first and then Natalie.
Okay.
I think going to 11-man's a great idea. And I would support that. What are we doing next fall to develop our defense? That's what I want to know.
I'm gonna rely on my head coach that I have full support and trust in with answering that question, and he might not answer it right now, but
He's on there. He's ready to speak.
Well, that's a great question. Those are the things that we have to work on as a coaching staff. We're in the process of breaking down all film through what we did this past season, and develop the right strategies and get the right personnel out on the field. That's an ongoing thing. Everything every year is something new.
Okay, I had two two comments and a question. For the move back to 11-man, I applaud that. I think that's awesome. The intent of switching to 8 was really just a numbers decision and a player safety and making sure that we could field a team. And I'm excited about the numbers that we have coming up and the quality of players that we have coming up. We've got a great feeder program, and it's great to see what the talent is that will be coming up in the next few years. So I think the move to 11-man, the opportunity to hopefully have some meaningful JV experiences to develop our players is a great thing. Second comment, I'm excited that esports is starting to take off and that we're getting some kids engaged in a school activity that maybe weren't previously. So I maybe was a little skeptical at first, but it's good to hear that that's going well. And then my question probably isn't going to be a surprising one, but Nick, I'm curious, and I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your strategy and approach for managing participation numbers, particularly at the middle school moving forward?
So I think that it's a tough question to answer, because when you have a program such as basketball where you have 5 players on the court at once versus soccer when you have 11 people on a field, it could look vastly different. I will say that I am going to find as many opportunities as we possibly can to keep student athletes involved, rather than going to a cutting policy. I think that I want to make sure that we offer as much as we possibly could. Did I foresee that we would have 42 to 44 athletes playing boys basketball? I will honestly say no. And I was pretty excited, but I will tell you that when I went to those practices, the coaching staff that we have here at Dirigo is incredible. And I was wide-eyed, like, ooh, it is a lot of student athletes to see all at once. And they bared with me for the first week, and they had practices together. Once we split practices apart, it looked better. And I think that now, with the solidification of having scrimmages with other schools that are also seeing this happen, in particular, Mountain Valley had an insane amount of student athletes participating specifically with boys basketball, that we're going to be able to offer them scrimmages on Fridays in particular, so that we don't have to displace teams necessarily within practices, or figure out another location for them to go. So I think that we have the possibility of offering student athletes opportunities across the board without going right to a cut policy.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, that was my concern. Without a cut policy, kids getting enough playing time. There's 27 on the JV. Coach Brown is probably having a tough time rotating them in, but that's a good thing, I guess. But I'm just concerned, without a cut policy, that kids aren't going to get a lot of playing time.
I think that if we are able to have the community open and supportive of the possible different opportunities that we can come up with having the scrimmages on Saturdays for a developing team, we can make sure that we still have them have ample opportunities, not necessarily within a JV game, but with those scrimmages that we can set up with other schools, and then having some inter squad chances so that they can see those game-like scenarios in particular, so that they can develop those abilities and skills further.
Any other questions for Nick? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Are you done? No, you're done. All right. Committee reports. Student
basketball practice.
Okie doke. Policy committee, we pretty much went over that. Finance committee, I know it got postponed.
Yeah, it got postponed a couple times, and Mary she had some issues where she's not be able to do all the paperwork, and nobody else is really qualified to put the quarterly report up. So it's been postponed again. I'm not sure what day it is now, though.
I know Mary's
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because Mary doesn't do that.
No, and if I had to do that, that would be,
I know, it's sad.
Yeah.
Curriculum,
Nothing to report.
when's your next meeting? Do you have one
I
scheduled?
don't think we have one set. It might be December. I'd have to talk to Jason. I haven't talked to him.
Okay.
So
All right, buildings and ground? Oh, it's Dawn.
We met, November 3rd. Kenny went over the new building. You guys all got an email from Pam that I read, which is a lot better explaining what I usually will do. We do have another meeting coming up, June 12th at 1 o'clock, and I do believe that is gonna be at June? July, yeah, July. January, yeah. Yeah, we'll have one in June too. That'll be the beer party. I do believe that's gonna be at middle school.
Elementary.
And that is because everybody has a chance to look at some of the things that Kenny's been working on, some of the things that we've got to look at to repair. Thank you.
Okay, negotiations, we have results coming up and we're starting tomorrow with another group. Personnel? Oh, sorry.
We have not met, so nothing to report, but we were going to reschedule our meeting and I don't know if so it was going to be January 9th and then we had talked last meeting, I'm going to be gone January 9th. So we talked about the 16th, but I don't know if we decided for sure. Did we confirm that or not? I think that we had looked at the 16th, which is just the next Tuesday. And it would have been before the meeting, I think, but oh. I think we could do the 23rd. 23rd. We will meet January 23rd.
All right. Okay, ad hoc committee,
They have not met, but they're meeting again December 4th at 5 o'clock. Oh, sorry,
December 4th.
5 o'clock.
What day of the week is that?
Oh, geez, that is a,
I have no, wait a
That's a
minute, that's
Monday.
next week.
That is
isn't
next
it?
week.
Holy mother, of say December. What's Friday? Oh, no, we have one more week. All right, board member comments. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, here, 3 or 4 meetings ago, we voted on 7 people. And we was told one price. But I will give everybody a Now, when I voted no that night because I didn't think the figures were right. And if you look at what I had done, I took all the figures that was in the email that was sent out. And it went from 75,000 to $158,439.91. I have a problem with that. If we're gonna vote on something as a school board member, we should know exactly what the cost is that we're voting. It's a taxpayer's money that we're spending. I would like to make a resolution or that we adopt that anytime we're gonna vote on anything, we have to have the dollar amount the total contract is costing us. It was more than double what we was told. And I think to be more transparent, we have to have accurate figures.
Well, and I'll speak for the negotiation. I can't look at these without having Mary. Mary does our figures. We don't, there's no hidden thing. There's no, we're going to cost double. I would have to look at these, which I will, because never, ever do we give a false information.
Well,
And if
that's the original, and that's what the copy should.
well, I'm just going to say it'll be looked into, but never, ever is that the intent. And I can't answer that now because that's something, should be brought up, and say, listen, this doesn't match. Where do you do that when something doesn't match? You don't think?
Well, it doesn't match because you've got to realize when you have a multi-year contract, it changes.
Yes, it does. And that is
that's what I
included.
took was the total price of everything for each one of the 7. For the 3 year, you got a 3-year contract. You got a 5%, 4%, and 3%.
Mm-hmm.
You add the aggregate, so you can really only go 3 total. So you have you're going 12%. You add the 5 points together. Well, I mean, yeah. Look at it again. Well,
And we'll make sure someone explains it because, huh? No, this is, yeah. Don't worry, I'm talking about that.
right, but these are the figures that evidently Mary come out with. So when they figured out $75,000, you're off over $75,000. And as a school board member, I think we ought to have the accurate figures.
We do. And I think if you think that, you need to come in, especially finance, and you need to talk and have it worked out. Because you're talking 4 of us are here.
Right, but I can't explain now until we go into executive session, but I will show you in executive session.
No, that we're not going to speak. We're not,
Right.
You don't do that. But I trust, and Pam always gives us the cost sharing thing. So we'll discuss the numbers and that will be it. Any more board member comments? And I will make one board member comment. Please, if you have an issue, pick up the phone, call her. She answers, she looks into it right away, and she gets to it. She's not an ogre. Yeah, call me, and I'll say, okay, you can do this. I don't even if I agree or disagree with the issue. I tell you the process, where to go, what to do. So that way it doesn't fester, and it doesn't. That was it. All right. I'm going to entertain a motion to enter into, sorry.
At the last meeting, we talked about the added cost of including the board members on the robocall.
You mean on Power School? Brian is not here.
So,
and we still need the cost. Thank you. All right. Enter into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405D for discussion and consideration of the BGT contract. Could I have a motion, please? And a second? Oh, tell me heads up. Thank you. We're back on. I entertain a motion.
I make a motion that meeting comes to an end.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Carl.
I make a motion that we verify vote on the building BGT salary
yeah, that's right.
increase step system that was just talked about in executive session.
Is that what it's supposed to say?
The entire contract.
Okay. Entire contract,
Years.
3 years. There you go. I
Thank you.
make a better motion that we approve the BGT 3-year contract.
Well, we used to say Monday Night Football. I had a second, right? I know you made a motion. I think I heard it. Did I have a second? Larry, okay. Comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? He abstained. I forgot. He's got relatives. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? And a second? All those in favor? Thank you. Good night. Natalie made the motion. Larry seconded.